Hello, everyone. Welcome to NJAI Solution Podcast, where we turn AI into real business. I'm your host, Nikunj Thakur, founder of NJAI Solution. Really excited for today's conversation. I'm joined by Ken Reddy, the founder and CEO of Ready2Grow, an award winning global tech leader who help other businesses grow using tech, cybersecurity, and smart system. He's worked with both startup and global brands and know how to turn complex problems into simple growth steps.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here on the show. So, when you started Ready to Grow, what pattern did you notice and what pushed you to focus on CIO as a service?
Great question. So I noticed that a lot of brands, especially startups, their executive structure wasn't right there. They didn't have the capital or the backing to necessarily hire the right staff that they needed to grow or acquire enterprise level clients. And the most funded businesses are B2B businesses. So it's in the SaaS space, it's really going after the banks, education systems. You really want those big players on your platform because it makes VCs, it makes you more attractive to VCs. Often what happens is you're a founder, you find somebody that's willing to work for equity and you sort of grow them up, but they might not actually be or have the experience of being an experienced CIO or experienced chief marketing officer. But you do what you can do, right? And that's really where I saw the opportunity for Ready2Grow is to come in and offer that muscle to punch above your weight class, right? What I saw with a lot of startups is they would go to sign their first contract with a big entity, one of the universities or one of the financial systems, and they get stopped because they didn't have the right people, process, and tech in place to pass one of the security audits required by those companies to sort of come on board. And really that's what we saw is we could come in and help that pre-funding stage where you come in and structure the company in a way that made you look more attractive to VCs. But it's also for companies that maybe had legacy staff and maybe people have been promoted and it's sort of the last guy standing, first guy in, last guy standing becomes CIO or CTO. And he's not really well versed in because he's been with the company for so long, he hasn't had a chance to update his skills or work on some new and relevant projects. So when the company starts their digital transformation, they really struggle with trying to keep up with all the information that they're expected to know and deliver. And so we come in and we sort of sit beside them and help them. We do something called a people, process, and technology audit, which is loosely based on an ISO standard. It's an old format back from the 70s. It's been updated through the decades. And we go through and we sit down and we find out where the friction is. So friction's a very key word in our business because when we talk about returning customers or we talk about growth, it's normally those friction points that stop your growth or those friction points that stop a customer from returning, or it's your business model. Sometimes your business model is not set up in a way that you've actually thought about recurring revenue from a client and you're only going in to solve one problem. And if you don't solve that problem extremely well and have a large pipeline, then you're going to not do yourselves any favors.
So you were talking about the friction points. Can you elaborate some more points about how does that friction point work?
Yeah, so in the terms of CIO-as-a-Service, the friction points generally are communication between the teams. So if you've got a growing company, you generally have you've got a sales team that's got a fire underneath them from the board or from the CEO to generate more sales because more sales means more revenue, which means you can grow faster. The problem with that is a lot of the times you don't have very experienced salespeople. So what they'll do is they'll overpromise customers. Hey, we can have that feature, just sign the contract and we'll have that feature ready for you tomorrow. And then you go to the dev team and the dev team's like, dude, we can't do that. That's like, it's not prioritized on the backlog. You're killing me, like stop. And then it creates this friction. A lot of times product and marketing have their own vision. And that's not always easily recognized through technology, or they want to use a tool maybe they've used in a previous role that hasn't been vetted or audited for your platforms. So it could present security risks. So that creates friction because you've got to explain to them, hey, and they're like, well, the other company uses. That's great. The other company uses it, but they probably had a process that audited it or they're going to put themselves at risk. So it's really, we developed something that we help encourage companies to do called the empty seat policy, right? So we always encourage them to have an empty seat at any team meeting so that other teams can kind of come in and see the challenges that they're facing and see the backlog that they have or the goals or the challenges they have. Tech sometimes doesn't always have empathy for sales, and there's a lot of pressure on sales to generate revenue, which is going to in turn help us build the tech team and provide more resources. Vice versa, sales doesn't always have empathy for tech because they don't understand what it takes to actually deliver a feature. So it's really getting that common understanding of what's going on in the company. So communication is one of the biggest friction points. The other one is budget. Everybody wants to do the cool thing. Everybody wants to do, the next game changer that they hear. AI for the last 3 years has been like, we've got to get ChatGPT.
Be efficient at every work.
Yeah.
People will take days to complete a work, and AI will do that in a couple of hours.
Yeah, that's true. But there's also something called AI slop, right? So people get lazy and they forget that they've actually got to go and check the work that the AI does. And then eventually it just gets sloppier and sloppier and sloppier. And then you just kind of blend in with all the other products out there. And then your CEO or CFO is going to be like, what's going on? Why are we losing sales? Why are we not getting more views? Why aren't people coming back to the website anymore? Because you lost the spirit of the team. But it is, I think AI, so I know it's a bit off topic, but AI, in my opinion, is best used for, I saw this great post the other day. It's the 4Ds, right? So it's the really boring stuff behind the background. So it's really good in CI/CD pipelines where you can go through and it can check errors and can make recommendations on code before it's delivered. It can check for security flaws, but it's not anything creative. I think people are doing themselves a disservice and their brand a disservice if they use AI to do their messaging or their sales.
Yeah, I heard a quote the other day that AI will not replace human. People using AI will. Because if you use AI efficiently, you will be faster and more productive, and you can give better results to the company. So it's true, but we should not completely be dependent on AI.
Yeah, that's it. And this problem is we get lazy.
Yeah. So obviously you help brands to understand their data and take decisions. So what's something that most brands miss while going through their data?
Yeah, I think so. The things that we definitely see is, and we uncover this in the people process technology audits, is what they really miss is they miss the internal piece, right? They miss that brand and the noble purpose, right? So it's really hard to define customer data points or customer cohorts or user segments if you don't understand the purpose of the brand. So you've got to be really passionate as a team, and there has to be a top-down, your CEO, CFO, head of HR, everybody has to be aligned on what the company does and what the noble purpose is. And the team has to follow that. And I think the last 7 years, that's something that's become a lot more important to people. 2010 to 2015, the economy sucked. Everybody just needed a job. So they just shut up and worked and took whatever work was there. But then after 2015, people started to say, hey, wait a second. I actually want to enjoy my job. I'm tired of being miserable. I'm tired of just getting paid. I'm tired of working all these crazy hours. And that impacts your internal, impacts your ecosystem, right? So what we teach people is everything's an ecosystem, and it starts with the core company. So the core company has to be aligned with the values of the team, and they have to believe in the noble purpose of what they're delivering. And so we work with a lot of overseas developers. So we have a large team over in Manila, and what we do is a big part of what we do is helping our teams when we place them with a client is, so say they need an app built or they need some flow built or whatever it is, we really take time at the start of the engagement. Instead of just deploying them, we get them to understand what they're building and why they're building it, why it's important, and try to relate it to something that they know in their life, because that makes them more passionate about it and they can see it and they're excited about it. And that's fire. You know what I mean? It's just like people are like on point. And that's often something that's missed. And if you miss that, then you're going to start missing other things. So the other things I would say is like not following up your customers or understanding, like if you don't understand your noble purpose, you don't understand how your company makes money, it's really hard for a developer to understand what the priority is, right? So if you've got sales saying, hey, we need these features, all these customers are asking for it, but you don't understand what that actually means, and you haven't identified or helped your team identify what their value is to the company or what the ROI and what they're doing is, it's completely skewed, right? And then they're not going to build the best product they can build, or they're not going to be able to help build a use case on why they need to prioritize these features, or think about it during, how many times have you been in a meeting and you didn't have the full picture. So the CEO didn't tell you exactly why you needed a feature built. The sales guys are keeping everything close to their chest. and they're asking you to build this, and if they would have just told you what the end goal was, you could have built it so much simpler and hit the roadmap instead of giving it to you piece by piece by piece, right? Because you can't build something like that, you know? It's like trying to drive a car and change the tire at the same time. It's just impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the one. Internal people overlook the internal. They always look external, but people nowadays, they want, the market's changed. So people want to feel like you're genuine as a company. And if your company is not aligned internally and people aren't happy internally, they're going to sense that and they're not going to come back. Right. People nowadays really want to work with people that they enjoy. And, you know, you see it like AI, how many people come to through LinkedIn and say, hey, they don't even look at your website. They just use AI and AI says, hey, you should reach it. And every day, probably about 10 times I write back, hey, how's it going? I actually do the exact same service.
And they were like, we can automate your LinkedIn outreach. And I was like, dude, I do the same thing.
That's the bad side of AI. Because that's what I mean about people getting lazy.
Don't do their homework and research.
Yeah. Well, there was somebody that I admire a lot, had a big Australian brand, and he posted a job for a personal assistant or something. I can't remember what the job was, but in the job description, it said, hey, record a Loom video and send it in to show me how you use AI in your job. 100 people sent in their thing. Not one single person did the Loom video because nobody read the job description. They just hit easy apply and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's I think companies, that's the thing is, so the other thing is when you sit down and you do your initial discovery with a company, you really got to listen. So I think a lot of people are so eager to make the sale, they overpromise, but they don't actually listen to what the customer is looking for, the pain point that they're trying to solve. And if you miss that, then everything else you do with that engagement is going to be off.
Yeah. So on your website, you talk about combining people, process, and tech. How does that approach help to improve customer retention?
Great question. So I think when you go through, when a company's struggling, everybody's very, very, very frustrated, right? Because everybody's working really, really, really hard. And so it's not about effort. It's about removing the friction points, right? And it's when I come into a company and I provide advice and guidance and I look at the processes and I help fix things, that's really good. But if they don't keep doing it or they don't have internal champions when I leave, which isn't always possible with certain companies, they need us to come back in and, you know, or if they've developed a new product or they're thinking about maybe there's a difference of opinion on, you know, which way they need to go with their new roadmap. They'll often bring us back in and ask us for advice and make sure that we have that same sort of streamlined process. But the other way that we normally, once we fix something, it's fixed. They don't need to call us back in. But where we get customers, and I'm really proud to say, since we're just about to celebrate, we're 2 weeks away from celebrating 7 years in business.
Congratulations in advance.
Thanks. We haven't spent one single dollar on ad spend. Everything is from clients referring us. So it's like the company's like, wow, they'll be out with beers with their buddy and he'll be like, oh man, we're having this problem. How did you guys solve this? And they'll be like, just, you know, here's Ken. They'll call me up and they'll pass the phone over and then we'll sit down and we'll go have a coffee and we'll just kind of figure out what we're doing. And I think my approach is I'll tell them right away, hey, yeah, we've seen that problem. We can fix it. Or I'm not the right guy, but I know somebody that is. And being honest and not being afraid to pass it on an opportunity. The next time he has a problem, he'll say, hey, Ken looked after me and he got that, you know, and it's very similar in e-commerce, right? In e-commerce, you use dopamine and you want to get people through, you want to get people feeling really excited about the product and get them clicking through. So at PayPal, we had this thing, you want to complete every transaction within 3 clicks, right? And then it became 2 clicks and then 1 click. But you really want to have that excitement about the product so that there's no regret when they get to the checkout, so that they continue the process. It's kind of the same thing with our business. We want to make sure that people have that really good feeling when they leave the first engagement and when it's ended, you know, that's really good. One problem we did have early on though is people felt too good about our services and what we were doing. So they'd immediately offer me a job. And then that's when they'd be like, we want you as our full-time CIO. And I'd be like, no, man, I can't do it. And sometimes that hurt the relationship a little bit.
I also want to face this type of problems, man. You told that you are doing business for like 7 years, right?
Yep.
So you have not spent a single penny on ad spend. So how do you promote your service organically? Can you share some thoughts about that?
Yeah, we just do a really good job, and our engagements are. Look, when you're honest with people, I think, and you're upfront with people, I think that brand reputation, that trust, is something that every company is going to have to do. I think that there's so much competition now. So COVID flipped the market upside down, right? And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter if you're selling overseas devs, you're selling LinkedIn's optimization, you're selling lead gen, you're selling clothes, shoes, food, doesn't matter what it is. Everything got turned upside down. So you saw a lot of people get displaced and a lot of businesses go under. So then what those people did is they went through and they tried to start their own business and their own company. So all of a sudden in my space, it was flooded with other consultants. It was flooded with other people that thought they could do what we do, but it's hard. It's really hard to kind of do what we do. And it's years of experience and years of like going through. And if you don't have that experience but you've got a cheap price, during COVID, that's what companies are looking for, is they're looking for cheap prices. So these companies would create lots of issues and they come in and they wouldn't really solve the problem and they'd waste a lot of money. Companies would get frustrated and then say, okay, everybody's got to come back into work. So with COVID, one of the challenges was hybrid work and remote work. And when do we bring people back in? And there's all these regulations around the buildings, you had to update your HVAC system. So it was just pure chaos. And then, so how we do it is really just, we don't advertise because we are known for solving problems. So it's like people come to us because they have a very specific problem. And what I always tell lead gen companies is, if you can find a way to replicate that, if you can find a way to identify that somebody that you're reaching out to on LinkedIn has a problem that I know I can solve, then, here's 20% of the contract, because I know I've got a 95 to 100% close rate on calls because the people have the problem and I either know the solution or I know somebody that can solve it for them.
So don't you think that if you spend some money on ads, you will have more chance to increase revenue and all that stuff?
Yep, 100%. But then my quality goes down. So like right now I can offer kind of like a boutique firm. So it's like marketing, right? You can go with a large marketing company that just pumps out ads and pumps out social media content, but you're just going to get lost in the noise. So here's we started earlier on talking about noble purpose. And one of the things during my executive career at PayPal and CanStar, one of the things that drove me nuts is every time we go to launch a new product, it was a board requirement that we'd have to bring one of the big four consulting firms in, right? To make sure that they signed off on it. So if there anything went wrong, it was sort of like a daylight test. The board could stand up and say, well, hey, we hired Deloitte or, one of these big guys to come up and they audited it and they said, yeah, it's going to work. And they gave us their advice. So it kind of acts as a shield, right? But the people that those companies send are either recent grads or execs that are at the end of their career that have never touched any of the technology that we're about to. So the information is so useless and it's just a box ticking exercise. And it's just massive amounts of money being wasted. Where we come in, and that's a problem that I really wanted to solve from day one, is I wanted to make sure that people that were actually working in the tech that they were being asked to be experts and were experts in that field. And two, that they were really passionate about, they were relevant, and the information and the help that they give would actually help companies grow. There's not a single company that I've worked for that's brought in one of the big four consulting firms that doesn't groan or just roll their eyes when they've got to go into one of those meetings to do the thing, because it's so painful.
Can many business owners reach out to you for your CIO services? What they really hope to get out of it? Is it just saving time or simplifying their operation, or they are looking for something like improve customer loyalty or better lifetime value?
I think for the CIO-as-a-Service, I think for CEO or COO-as-a-Service, I think that definitely those points they're really looking to solve, because normally they've got investors or board members that are looking to solve those challenges. But I think on a technical level, it's trust. So again, internal, if you have a company that's grown or is in a growth phase and you've got a CTO or a head of technology that is struggling, or your perception is that they're struggling, sometimes the rest of the exec team will put pressure on the CEO and say, hey, stuff's not getting done fast enough. Can you bring in somebody to help them? Or can you bring in somebody, or maybe this person's not the right person for the role? So it's really trust. Or the CTO is really good at their job and they'll sell the CEO no a lot of the times, and the CTO or the CEO doesn't want to hear no. So they'll bring in somebody else to get that expert opinion. So it's a really tricky thing, because you want to build up and you don't want to alienate the people that you're coming in to help, but you also want to make sure that you are assessing it correctly and making sure that the person, which is why we do the people process technology audits, because we want to make sure that there's no skills gaps, or if there is a skills gap, how do we help these people or address, we talked about friction points earlier on as well. So it's how do we address those friction points? How do we go through and make it a better communication channel between the CIO and the CEO or the CFO, right? So perfect example, one situation that we see a lot is cybersecurity, right? As companies grow and customer data becomes more important and you need customer data to affect decision-making and to build new products, there's not a lot of time. Cybersecurity and data privacy is normally an afterthought, right? So what we do is we bring legal into the process right at the front, and we try to front load that and say, here's the risk. This is why you need that budget. So the CTO is not wrong. You actually need this budget to be able to secure this data. And here's the ROI. And here's ways that we can maximize that to make sure that we offset that cost. And sometimes it's just a messaging. Sometimes you could have the greatest CTO in the world, but their messaging sucks, right? They don't know how to speak to the CFO to get things approved. And so we'll help them do things like learn how to write a one pager or learn how to communicate more effectively, understand what the CEO needs to make the decision. And one of my previous bosses had this great analogy of, in a technology company, it's like flying a plane. So you've got the CEO, which is a pilot, and the tower is the board, and you've got the CFO and the CIO or CTO as the co-pilots, right? And those three have to be in alignment, and they've got to be, the CFO and the CIO or CTO have to be able to feed relevant information back to the pilot so he can relate it back to the tower. And that's how you're going to have a smooth, safe flight. And I think that works beautifully.
So what are your top priorities at Ready2Grow this year? Are you looking to grow the team, launching something new, or focus on something else? And what are the challenges that are holding you back right now?
Wow, great questions. So what am I looking to focus on? I'm looking to grow the US. Obviously, we open up in the US. So I'm looking to grow the US market, but we want to do it in a way that is going to be empowering to people. So what we really want to do that we weren't able to do during COVID is we really want to recreate more people that have the same understanding and the same background that I do, so that they can come in and help, so that we can penetrate more regions. Obviously, I can only be in so many places, and we are able to effectively do that in Australia and the UK. But here in North America, especially in the South, we want to focus on hiring more people so that they have the opportunity to kind of build their own clientele and build their own client base. More of a traditional, almost like a marketing company. We want people to own their own portfolios and really go after things, but still align to and adhere to the brand standards that we've been known for.
And what are the challenges that are holding you back?
I think when you trying to find people that are at that right stage of their career, right? So it's like you kind of need people that have been an executive, that have tried consulting and maybe didn't do the best at it, and that are willing to learn. And that can be tricky because egos come into play, and everybody wants to do things their own way. And we've been pretty firm. Like I can show you all the emails that I've had back to all these lead gen companies saying the same thing for the last 6 years. Like, listen, we don't do that. Everybody's like, oh, you're going to be out of business in 6 months. Well, we're still here, and we've grown to 6 countries. So it's one of those things where I know this works, and it works because we're not pushing and we're not selling something fake, right? It's like, you have a problem, we have a solution. It's like your car is on empty and we're the gas station, right? We can fill you up and send you on your way, and and that's it. It's as simple as that. And it's like, if you're full of gas and somebody says, hey, come meet this guy, it's just going to wear down the brand. And we never really wanted to do that. We always wanted to be that trusted brand.
The last one for now. How are you personally thinking about AI this year? And are there any tools or trends that you are exploring right now?
Yeah. So during COVID, we created an AI platform called Ken.ai, and we won an award for it, Most Courageous Leadership Award, and it was addressing workplace violence and workplace bullying in the COVID environment. So working remote, it allowed a lot more people to forget what it's like to work in an office. And so there was a lot more incidents of violence, incidents of like bullying, harassment. But then we also saw an increase in domestic violence spilling back into the workplace. People had been at home, things got crazy, and then they were going back, trying to transition back, and it was creating danger for people. In the UK, it was actually mandated that companies had to use a platform like Canon to be able to help protect their employees. And that was really our first foray into the AI space. Most recently, what we've been doing a lot of is working with like Salesforce Einstein to go through and build workflows to help reduce the workload on people. So instead of hiring new people, making it, we started the call talking about that, looking at ways to make it easier for people to get access to the information. So you're not always going to the same person. Customer service that's there's always one or two senior agents that everybody's bothering all the time and they're not able to do their job. So be able to take their information and put it into Einstein is a really effective way to sort of help them improve and get more confidence and grow their skills. So we've spent a lot of time doing that. AI, so I think AI is great. I think it has a place, but I think people are misusing it. As part of the things we uncover in the people process and tech audit is when people start looking at dips and numbers or they start looking at roadmap productivity, you can really see where there's dips when people use AI ineffectively or they try to use it to do their job without checking. So they're just copying and pasting. They're not cleaning up the slop and encoding that's horrible. It's created a lot of issues. Because it's the same thing, right? It's that analogy of you can't push your entire code base into AI and expect it to, one, be secure, and two, so what you're doing is you're trying to solve one problem and you're asking it to write a function and you're asking it to write a block, but without knowledge and that understanding. I feel the more people use AI for coding, the harder it's going to be for a lot of companies, because a lot of companies that are starting out, the only reason they got to where they were is because they were able to bootstrap stuff and pull together fixes really quickly and kind of go through and do the needful when it was needed. Now, obviously, at some point that creates a lot of tech debt and you've got to go back and fix things. And again, that's what our audit uncovers. And so we actually come in and we help companies reduce that friction, because name a company that doesn't have tech debt, right? And doesn't have time to actually address the tech debt. So it's like, we can actually come in and build that use case and say, hey, listen, if you've missed the roadmap deadlines for the last 3 quarters, it's because of the tech debt, because there's so much slop that they've got to go back and they've got to fix. And every time they add new functionality, they've got to go back and retroactively try to fix something from a guy that worked here 12 years ago that's no longer there. And we can't get the answers of why he did things that way. So we got to kind of come through and fix that so that going forward, it's more standardized, it's documented. And so we can build that use case for the company. And we can even offer developers to sort of come in and help them do some of that cleanup work and document this stuff, the really boring stuff that nobody wants to do. Like nobody wants to go in, well, not nobody. I know some people that are, a little bit, I call them sick, but they really enjoy getting into that pain of going back and looking at what other people did and why they did it and documenting it. I don't have the patience for that, but some people do. But there is, it's needed. So to be able to do that and have your team still continue to understand and build what's needed and just feed the requirements and the fixes to a sub team, I think is great.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with the audience. For any listener who might like to connect with you, what would be the best way to reach out?
Yeah, just reach out on LinkedIn. It's just Ken Reddy. So Kenreddy. Yep.
Okay.
Or just Ken at Reddy2Grow.